Hey everybody, we're live with I still call him boss.
I'm only your boss when I'm paying you.
Former Oakland Mayor Elihu Harris, who, Elihu, you've been the man about town lately. You've done this forum, made this speech, made that speech, made this appearance, made that appearance. You're more celebrity now than you've ever been. Well, that's not quite true, but what before we get into the nitty gritty conversation, what are you up to now?
A lot of things. I'm really, like I said, I'm working on housing, affordable housing, homeless housing, student housing. I think one of the most important things in California right now is to deal with people who are not appropriately sheltered, unsheltered people, people who are undersheltered, living at home, foster kids. So many people don't have adequate housing in California. I think it's one of the real crises in our state.
Do you think that we're going to get to a point where we overcome this soon?
I think we have a choice. I think all the politicians are focused on it, the governor's focused on it, federal government is certainly dealing with it on a certain level, and the cities are definitely under siege. Oakland is in a crisis because of homelessness. You know, you can't find safe places to go. You can't go to retailers. They're closing everywhere because the homeless people both besieging and pestering their customers. So there's a lot of different issues where homelessness affects the quality of life in our cities. And, you know, so goes the cities, so goes the nation.
Hey, so on that note, we have the mayor's race.
Yes.
And we have a situation where up until we get the next run, which would be at 5 o'clock Pacific, or just a little bit before that, Chang Tao was 2.8% behind Lauren Taylor. And with at least a day's more worth of ballots to count.
Today's maybe 2 days the way they're going. My understanding is 150,000 votes in the county and maybe 50, 60,000 votes left in Oakland. And so depending upon where those counts are coming from, we'll make a determination as to whether or not we have a final trend or whether or not it's still up in the air.
So let's talk about it. One thing that we're certain of is we're either going to get Lauren or Chang as our next mayor.
Right.
What are your thoughts?
I think it's trending. I think if I had to make a bet today, I'd say Lauren Taylor. I would have said that last week. But, you know, yesterday, on Monday, Terry Wiley was leading and had been leading since day one in the district attorney's race. Now, all of a sudden, he's 2,000 votes behind. So it's really hard to know what's going on when you have all these different categories and zones of voters that tend to be predominantly one way or the other when it comes to a particular candidate. So if it's true countywide, to some extent, it's also true in the city.
Hey, do you know how that's done? In other words, is it proper to assume that later ballots that are being counted, in other words, the ballots they're counting now, are based on votes that were done, early votes that were done later in the campaign?
Yes, these votes were done at the last minute. Either they came in on election day directly or they came in the mail postmarked by election day. So nobody knows when people actually voted. They only know when the mails came in or when their ballots were turned in. So they could have voted a month ago and just turned in their ballot the last day. You just don't know.
Yeah, I sent mine in 12 days ago.
Right.
And on it said the deadline, you had to get it in by the 15th.
Right. You met that.
Yeah, and that was yesterday.
Well, no, it had to be postmarked, I think, by the 8th. You couldn't mail it after the 8th. It had to be postmarked by the 8th and received by the 15th.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Had to be received by the 15th. Absolutely. Yeah. And I fell well into that category.
Right.
Yeah, actually, I was 10 days ahead of election day when I did that.
Right. You were fine. You're absolutely fine. Because it was postmarked. And listen, if it wasn't received by then, there's a bigger problem with the Postal Service than anybody understands.
Yeah, absolutely. So if it's Lauren, what kind of city? Okay, let's just take this as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
We would have Lauren as it looks. And I frankly hope so. Just putting it out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we will have Nikki Fortunato Baskin reelected against Harold Lowe.
Mhm.
And we will then have Kevin Jenkins as new District 6 council member.
Right. And John and E in District 4.
And John and E, how could I forget John and E? Just had her on the show. Great interview. I love talking with her.
Mhm.
It's on Oakland News Now, blog.com, and Zenny62 on YouTube as the new District 4 council member. So let's take it as a whole. Going in, what kind of advantage does Lauren have, if any? What does he bring to the table?
Well, I think Lauren's very smart. I think it's a policy walk to some extent. But he needs to have, here's what he's got to go. He's got to go in fact, he's been on the council. I think he has a pretty decent grasp of the issues. But let's talk about what he's got to have to overcome in order to be effective. One, he's going to have to go from being a policy mark to an administrative mark. He's going to have to go from just thinking about policies and implementing policies that are going to make a change. He's faced with a crisis in homelessness and crime and black. He's got to tackle those things first. He's got to have a strategy to do it. You got a city workforce that doesn't want to come back to work. You got a city council that hasn't met in person in the last 2.5, almost 3 years. He's got a city administrator that is not well thought of by this council. He's got to develop his own relationship with the council that he has very few committed votes or loyalists on. He's got a lot of challenges, but he's only can overcome them if he has a clear strategy. First of all, admitting that he's got problems and then figuring out a way to put those problems into some kind of a bite-sized piece.
Do you think that he's done that already? Has he? No. I haven't looked at his website, in fairness, so, if someone has, great. But I heard you say no.
Well, no, I mean, he doesn't have a great relationship with his colleagues. Not bad, but they're not on his team. You got to have collaboration. You got to have 5 votes, on the city council for anything you want to do, and particularly with your budget. You got to have a city administrator that has the faith and confidence of you and the council as it relates to the administration of the policies, both adopted by the council and initiated by the mayor. So there are a lot of things that have got to fall into place, certainly issues that need to be corrected if you're going to be effective. And a city that, quite frankly, is, I won't say hopeless, but certainly in crisis as it relates to many significant problems. Again, black, homelessness, and crime being the most identifiable.
Why is it, Elihu, I don't get the sense that as a whole, either the city management, leadership, or electorate cares enough to en masse, like we did with Oakland Sharing the Vision, meet together, decide on a path, and go on that path, and then do that path? Why do I get the sense the city is so divided and not able to do that?
I don't think that would have been the mayor's focus. I mean, the current mayor, not the mayor-elect. The one thing that I've been proud of, I'm kind of using myself as an example, but not specifically, is that I brought in some young people with passion for public service. They wanted to solve problems. They weren't intimidated by the enormity of the problem, the complexity of the problem, and they thought they could overcome anything, i.e. Zenny Abraham. There was nothing I could tell you couldn't do because you want to whip my behind if I said, Zenny, you can't do X, Y, or Z. And you were more than eager to show me that you could solve a problem, come up with a solution. That's the kind of people you got to have on the mayor's staff. That's the kind of city administrator you got to have, having the confidence and the commitment to implementing change in the face of adversity.
Thank you very much for that, Elihu. Much more than appreciated. Checks in the mail. But anyway,
I think you remember that was the entire makeup of our staff. You guys fight with each other, but you wouldn't let anybody else pick on you. There was a synergy inside the mayor's office to say, hey, we're taking on the bureaucracy. They don't necessarily understand or appreciate or respect us, but they will.
Like Alton Jelks, I thought, was another person who really fit that bill, he came to work to go to war, not in a bad way, but in a good way. Nicole, our chief of staff. Colin Lacon, who I think is with Kaiser now. Monica, I mean.
She's the head of the United Negro College Fund. Gilda, is the head of the Planned Parenthood. Jeanette Dawn was the head of the Parks and Rec, as well as worked for Wilma Chan, as well as worked for Alameda County Health and Human. These are all, and well, the Port of Oakland. I mean, these are all people who continue, even to this day, to be involved in problem solving.
Yeah, and then I went on to try to bring the Super Bowl to Oakland, and no one gave me a chance, and almost did it.
Well, but again, you got to have a mayor who's willing to delegate and trust that the people he has have not only the integrity, but the ability to implement strategic visions.
Is Lauren capable of assembling a staff that does that? Because, look, as council member, he didn't really do anything.
Right. Well, council members often don't. There's nothing stopping them from doing it, but sometimes they get in a box and they think their job is to react to the mayor. In other words, they don't have to initiate anything. All they got to do is vote yes or no on what's been put in front of them. I don't think that's the best way to govern, but there are many people who accept that as the appropriate perspective of a member of a city council or any legislative body. We react to the policies, the priorities of the administrator, i.e. the mayor, city administrator, or city manager in some cases. So I think that what you got to have is that balance between a mayor and city administration that has a clear vision and agenda, and a city council that's prepared to weigh in on that agenda and strategy, and more importantly, make sure that the resources that are necessary are prioritized and made available so that implementation that mutually agreed upon can be achieved.
Now, Derek Sue, who also ran for mayor, writes, solutions were put before Oakland's top administrators. These solutions can be implemented today as long-term solutions, but officials only explore, quote, temporary solutions, unquote. What do you think about that, Elihu?
I think it's absolutely true. I mean, the bottom line is this. You got a problem, illegal dumping. How do you solve that problem? We got a problem. There's homelessness and homeless encampments all over the city. How do we solve that problem? In what order? What priority? What timetable? Can we agree upon that? What are the resources it's going to take? Can we agree upon that? I mean, it's not rocket science. People have been doing this for thousands of years. Sometimes better, sometimes worse. Sometimes a little different set of problems. But always with the idea, there are problems, there are resources. How do we apply the resource to solve those problems in the most appropriate way we know how?
Now let's shift gears and talk about if Shang Tao wins. How will that be different in your view?
It's not going to be any different at all, other than she has allies on the city council. She probably got 4 votes on the city council, just looking for a 5th. Most of the candidates she supported actually won, including Lauren Taylor and Kevin Jenkins and John Anee. So I think that Shang would start with at least the potential for 5 votes before she's even sworn in as mayor. Lauren has to take the next 2 months and build those relationships because they need to be repaired or they need to be established.
Yeah, because he had an adversarial relationship with both Shang and Nikki,
and Carol Fife.
Right. And why is that, do you think? Is it because
and with Rebecca Kaplan, who's like to remain on the council? So the only person that he has I think a working relationship with is Treva Reed.
Yeah, but that seems to
as a working relationship with Noel Guile, but not a political alliance.
Well, Noel actually got after him during the whole hearing around Howard Terminal when Noel blasted Lauren for the way his district looked.
Right.
You know, which was a wild blast. But so around them, let's talk about the council members that are coming in. I know the least about Kevin Jenkins. I tried to reach out to interview him.
Kevin is a 32-year-old, basically public policy guy who is working for United Way, who has done internship with people like Keith Carson. He's on the Peralta Community College Board. He's a political animal. He's ambitious. He wants to achieve things. He wants to work the politics. And so I think Kevin's coming in.
Ambition. I love it.
With ambition. and he wants to prove himself and show himself, and he wants to be a long-term player.
Can he be?
Yes, yeah, he's very smart, and he listens. He can be mentored, and that's always an issue for younger political people who come in with a lot of vigor and a lot of vitality, but often without a real plan. The question is, can they begin to develop their own political identity to go with that ambition? And I think he can.
Will he be more effective in District 6 than Lauren was, given that Lauren had the backing of the mayor, Schaaf, and Libby's access to her political capital?
I think he can be, and I think he wants to be. Will he be? I think that's going to be the challenge for anybody. You know, it's easy to wish and think and want. The question is, when you really get down to it, do you have the bandwidth, or can you develop bandwidth to be an effective person in a very complex time? It has nothing to do, quite frankly, so much with the individual as the nature of the challenge. You talk about, there's no time for a learning curve. You got to hit the ground running. You know, when you jump off the plane, you got to pull the parachute because you're going to hit the ground quick.
And I suppose that's where having a good relationship with Lauren is, because Lauren is his predecessor. And if Lauren becomes mayor, it'd be easy.
Well, but more importantly, but he's also represented that area on the Peralta board. So he did a lot of door-to-door campaigning. He talked to a lot of voters directly. So he has a good feel for his district. I think that's going to be the real opportunity that he brings, is that he doesn't have to learn the issues. I think he knows the issues. The question is, can he then grasp city policies and procedures and develop the relationship necessary to put together a strategy?
Great point. Let's talk about Nikki Fortunato-Bass getting reelected and Harold Lowe coming in and challenging her. Harold got upset with me because I half jokingly made a video accusing him of operating on CP time because he started so late.
Right. Well, I think the CP time he operated on was getting into the campaign. People are running for public office like they're running for student body president. They already know everybody in the school, and it's just a matter of getting their votes. No, people don't know you. You're a city council candidate. People are going to vote for the known versus the unknown, even if the unknown may be a little bit more attractive, because ultimately, you don't want to make things worse. Harold Lowe was an unknown quantity of most of the people living in the second council district. Didn't have a lot of time to establish himself or his brand. That's a challenge.
Yeah, and then I understand that by his own words, he lost his campaign manager.
I don't know much about that. I only know that he got to the party late. When you get to the party late, unless you bring in a whole lot of resources in terms of mail, social media, organizers, volunteers, it's hard to catch up.
Now, there's also the factor I want to discuss for a second. There was a letter that was sent out by a number of good people that I know. Andrew Park, who ran for District 2 10 years ago. Russell Jung, who you know, who worked for John. I can go on and on and on. Saying that they had the signatures of 240 Asian Oaklanders, all who were backing the re-election of Nikki Bass, primarily because the whole Asian, I don't say this to diminish it, it is a problem, the Asian hate problem, or at least how much of a factor do you think that was in her getting reelected?
A lot of people were not happy with Nikki in terms of the issues in Chinatown and Little Saigon. So I think it was a mixed bag. I think some people saw her as a person who was sensitive and interested in the issue. A lot of people thought she wasn't dealing with it effectively. So, like anything else, you're the elected official. There are problems. They're not solved. You get held accountable.
Yeah. So basically what you're saying to me is that if Harold had started, say, 4 months earlier,
right,
he'd had a shot at beating her.
I think anybody has a shot at beating any incumbent when there are problems that are ongoing and that are not solved or perceived as being under control. And but you got to start early. You got to identify those unhappy people. You got to get them engaged. You got to get them involved. I don't think Harold, or quite frankly anyone, was able to do that effectively during this campaign.
Yeah, let me ask you something. When you first ran for mayor, how did you approach running it versus how, say, Lauren and others have done it?
I started the year in advance, and and I put together a team of people. I had a organizer in every one of the 7 city council districts. Larry Reed, who later represented District 7, was one of them. Gilda Gonzalez organized District 5. I had Jeanette Dong in District 2, on and on. So I had people who really began to develop relationships with the businesses and others in those respective city council districts. I had leaders in each of those city council districts who were supporting me. I had labor. You build an organization just like you build a meal. Make sure it's balanced. You make sure everything fits on the plate, and you make sure the resources are there, because you can't make a meal if you don't have the component parts.
And folks, you hear that? That is, Elihu just laid out the brilliant model for anybody running for mayor in Oakland. If you don't, you got to take that and save it and box it and then call the man. So let's move along regarding the council. Miss Rachmanjran is in. What will her legacy be? How do you think she's going to do?
Who is that again?
Janani.
Oh, yeah. Janani. Yes.
Sorry.
I call it Jumanji. Don't worry about it. And she told me I'm not a board game. Okay. But Janani, obviously, Stanford, Berkeley graduate, bright, ambitious. I think made the mistake of trying to get in water too deep by running for the assembly in her first run for elected office. But she learned her lessons. She worked every day. She walked precincts every day. She did not have the number of volunteers in the city council race that she had in the state assembly race, but she got 67% of the vote. That's not chopped liver. So she obviously did the work. She raised the money. She did effective mail and social media. She had put together a good campaign team that she plans to take with her in some part to the city, to her city council staff. I think she's going to be somebody to watch, as will Kevin.
You have 2 stars, District 4 and District 6. We have 2 young stars, what you're telling me.
32 and 30 years old.
That's something else. Yeah.
It's a real changing of the guard when it comes to the age of elected officials.
And both of color.
Right.
I mean, quite interesting. Which gets to my next question. Do you think it says something that the majority of people running for mayor this time out were Black in a city that's not a majority Black population with a homeless population that's majority Black?
Right. Does
that say anything at all, or is it just all coincidence?
I mean, a lot of it's coincidence. I mean, the fact that Black people are poor is not a coincidence. And that they're homeless is not a coincidence. But I do think that what you had was, you have a long tradition of Black political leadership in the city of Oakland, and very few opportunities to advance that interest, career interest in politics. There aren't that many political jobs that pay. So you had people who saw this as a unique opportunity of changing the guard with a new mayor, and they seized the opportunity. Some of them were past political or elected officials like Greg Hodge. Some of them were young, like Elisa Victory. I think the combination made them unrealistic, in my opinion, in running for mayor, because it's hard to jump out of the box, either with a long absence from politics, i.e. Greg Hodge or Ignacio de la Fuente, or a new entrance into politics like Senator Scott or Lisa Victory. I think it takes a while to establish your brand, for people to know who you are, what you're running for, and more importantly, have enough trust and the ability to communicate an agenda that people say, I want to invest in that. I like that. I'm confident that that's the person who not only has a plan, but can implement it.
And okay, at this point, since you said the magic words, I will say I owe Elihu dinner, because I was absolutely certain that Seneca Scott was going to prevail in the race.
I can't. Let me say this though. I'm gonna collect on the dinner, so before I don't want you to think I'm gonna let you renege on that. But here's the point I will make. Seneca, in many ways, was a much more impressive candidate than I knew him to be when I made the bet. I thought he was very bright. I didn't think he was as prepared as he needed to be, particularly running for mayor. That's one of the problems when you're out of the box running for mayor. You don't just dump into the deep part of the pool if you never can walk in the shallow end. So that was my issue with Seneca, and still is. But I do think he had a lot of ideas. He had a certain level of confidence. It was kind of grassroots. It wasn't sophisticated. It wasn't real sharp in terms of a knife. But I think that he at least brought some. I thought he was smart, and I thought that a lot of people underestimated his political acumen.
Yeah, I thought as much as I appreciate and value our friendship, this is just a constructive criticism, but nothing I've been said to him privately. I thought he spent so much time on social media, and I think he needed to shift his gears toward more focus of establishing a true ground game that represented in every area, kind of like what you laid out in your districts. He needed to do that.
Right.
And I kept saying, you need to talk to Elihu. You need to talk to Elihu.
But he wasn't prepared to do that. That's why he shouldn't have run. It wasn't whether or not he wanted to do it. He couldn't do it because he didn't have the bandwidth. And that's not, I'm a political realist. I lost one election in all the times I ran, and I ran because I couldn't get the vote out. And I basically had made a determination that if people were not interested enough to come out and vote, I wasn't interested in being in office. So it didn't bother me a whole lot because I thought I was offering myself in public service, not that I needed a job. And that was the way. I'm glad that I went out that way because I wanted to say, look, I'm here to serve. But if you don't want my services, all you got to do is not vote. They didn't vote. I lost. I'm good with it.
Yeah, that's a healthy way of looking at it, too. Now, I have to remark on the Alameda County Supervisor District 3 race because I thought initially it was Rebecca's to lose.
It was. Not initially. It was always. But here's the thing, just to be quick. There was, Nate Motley is my understanding, so I'm not saying just take this as gospel. $400,000 came in from the apartment house owners because they thought she was going to be the third vote for rent control in unincorporated areas of Alameda County. She wasn't prepared to deal with that. And $400,000 is a lot of money and a lot of mail. If you're not taking corporate money, you're not raising the kind of chunks of money to be able to respond to accusations that you're going to do X, Y, or Z. It was a hard-hitting campaign, perhaps very unfair, but you got to do, if you're going to go to war, you got to understand you better have the armaments or you're going to lose.
Yeah.
And politics is a civil form of war, hopefully without death as the person who's defeated. But yeah, I mean, politics is war. If you're not prepared to go to war, don't get in it.
Hey, before we close out, I also have to talk about the plight of Leanna Powell because she feels like she's been forgotten. She worked for Shangtao for 3 months.
Okay.
And is now the focus, or I should say, not so much the focus, but the raison d'etre for the Oakland Public Utilities Commission, the Oakland Ethics Commission. It would be nice if we had a utility, wouldn't it? But Oakland Public Ethics Commission's investigation of Shangtao for a number of alleged improprieties, most notably the fact that Ms. Powell was asked to and bullied to work on Shang's mayoral campaign while she was a city council staffer, which is a clear violation of law that the Oakland City Attorney's Office has a whole page on.
Right.
So how does this affect Shang going in, either as council member or mayor, or the city and the city of Oakland by extension?
Well, if she loses, it doesn't affect her at all. I think that the worst case scenario would be a fine, and probably the city will have to pay it. But I think that for Ms. Powell, the real issue is a lawsuit for wrongful termination. I think she has a good case against the city. Shang is an agent of the city. She's an employee of the council member, and you can't fire somebody for refusing to do an illegal act. So I don't know what Shang's defenses are. I'm not saying she doesn't have any. Maybe it wasn't as it's been perceived or portrayed. Maybe she said, "I need you to help me in my campaign, but I don't want you to." You have a right to ask your staff to work for your political efforts, but not on city time. I don't know whether or not they're going to be able to prove that Ms. Powell was actually being demanded to do it on city time, or was she being asked to do it on non-city time and given comp time or some other. I don't know all the details, but if it's as she portrayed it to be, that she was fired because she refused during city time when she's supposed to be in City Hall working, I don't think that's going to be very defensible.
Do you think Shang made a mistake by not coming out and embracing Ms. Powell as a Black woman who she made a mistake to, and then?
I think that I can't say what the mistakes are because I don't know the details in it, but I will say this: one, staff of a political person are political staff. They can't be made to do anything illegal, but they are directly connected to the candidate. If you work for me, Zenny, and I say, Zenny, this is not a 40-hour-a-week job. This is the 80-hour-a-week job. And I need you to go to community meetings at night. I need you to go to, this or that. And that's what I expect. And you sign off for that. I don't want to hear about it. I did my 40 hours.
Yep. I'll say one thing, too. There was never a time when anybody pressured me to work on your campaign to go to the assembly.
No, because it's illegal. And
right.
And that
came up. Elihu, I forgot that fact because what I was trying to do, as you remember, was I wanted to run economic development and all that stuff. I didn't even have all the other stuff in my mind, but also you didn't put it in my mind.
Right.
So thank you. I mean, but there's a model of how you should be.
But you still helped me.
Yeah.
But it was because you wanted to and you believed in me. That's what your staff should be. Your staff should be people who believe in the person they're working with. If it's just a job, then you shouldn't be part of political staff. You ought to be in the civil service.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. That's a good way to close out. It's about 30 minutes. What do you say?
It's always good. We can talk all day. You and I get it. We have interchanges. They're almost violent, except we're separated by the internet. The internet's the only thing keeping us from physically fighting.
Oh, on that note, there is one thing. It's not a fighting thing, but it makes me fighting mad.
Okay.
The Coliseum is in awful, awful condition.
Right.
And I look, since I've now covered the NFL for about 20 years. Wow. Jeez Louise, these numbers. There's no plan for the Coliseum except people talking about, we'll turn it down. And then I look all throughout the world, and there are these magnificent multi-purpose stadium towns and all kinds of signals of a positive future of sports as economic development. What is it with us that we run the Coliseum as if it were a high school gymnasium? I said it just like that. What's going on, man? Because you know what I figured out? And I'm not saying this because I work for you. It's true. Yours, well, actually, the Kwan administration is the last administration to think about the future of sports in any kind of way. But after your departure and the change to strong mayor, we went from somebody, Jerry, who really didn't care. And then we got Gene, who cared somewhat, but didn't quite know how to get reelected. And in between that,
you had Dellums all together.
Right. And then we had Ron Dellums in between that. It was like catch as catch can. What's going on with us, though, where we don't see the value of sports as economic development like we used to?
Well, Zenny, before you talk about the Coliseum, the whole city looks that way. I don't know why you picked up the Coliseum. And that's what's really terrible. But again, you have to have a strategy. You have to have a commitment to investing in capital projects and in public works. How your city looks is perception. Perception can become reality for a lot of people if they see illegal dump sites everywhere and think everything is a dump site. So you got to make sure graffiti, illegal dumping, garbage cans, everything are addressed in a way that says, hey, we care how we look. This is our front yard. This is where we play. We don't want to have broken glass and bottles on our playground. It really has got to be that level of pride that the city administration, the county administration, and those who are charged with the operation of the Coliseum and the arena take their responsibilities. Whatever you got to do, you got to just have a little guy with a push cart, sweep it up. You got to do that every day, even if nobody comes.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Oh, and by the way, what are your thoughts on Ignacio de la Fuente coming up a distant third, even though he was ahead of everybody else in terms of the vote?
He got started late. Ignacio is a quality candidate. Ignacio never talked to me once.
What? Wait, what?
No, he didn't. But that's his choice. I only said that as a matter of fact, not a judgment. You can talk to people who you value, who you care about their opinion. And Ignacio is my friend, but obviously he did not value my support or ask for my opinion. To me, that's not the issue. The main issue was he got started late. He should have built a better foundation, because Ignacio is a quality candidate who should have done much better.
On that note, Elihu, I'm going to have you back soon. By the way, folks, Elihu's on my advisory board. Zenny 62 Media. He has been.
Yeah, invest in Zenny 62. I need money.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. He's got stock, folks.
Yeah, pay to advertise.
And I did it out of a thank you for the fact that, I'll tell you why I did it. Because this came out of the blue. I offered it to him. I'll tell you why. Because this man's been free with his valuable advice for a long, long time with me. Going back, 1995. I remember, in fact, you hired me.
That's what I made a determination to invest in you, Zenny, and you've been a good investment. So I would say invest in Zenny 62. You can't go wrong.
I got to tell this story though, because it's funny.
All right.
When I came into your office, I was known as the late Walter Cohen, rest in peace, recall, Obama. And you said, Zenny, I'm going to teach you how to cultivate power.
Okay.
And I remember one day we were in a meeting regarding land conveyance with the Navy, and had to do with West Oakland, the Army base.
Mm-hmm.
Big meeting. There must have been 24 people in that meeting.
Right.
The mayor's office, large conference room. And you told me to sit to your left.
Mm-hmm.
And I said absolutely nothing,
mm-hmm.
except I wrote you a note and I whispered in your ear.
Right.
And the change in how people treated me from that point on was dramatic.
Well, let me tell you. I'll tell you another story, and then we're going to call it a day. A friend of mine, who was the first African American on the Arkansas Supreme Court, went in a meeting with then Republican Governor Winthrop Rockefeller. He was a Democrat. And Winthrop Rockefeller gave him two choices. He said, I can give you a job, or I can walk across the room with my arm around your shoulder. Which one you want me to do? And he chose to have him walk around with his arm on his shoulder. And you know why? Because everybody knew he was important, and everybody knew he was a friend of the governor, had the governor's ear. That was more valuable than looking like he worked for the governor.
Yes, the optics of power,
right,
is
right,
more than notable.
So when people see you, that I'm listening to you, and I'm paying attention to what you're telling me, that says Zenny has influence. Zenny is someone who can help me to achieve my goals. If I can convince Zenny, Zenny might be able to convince the mayor. I don't have that kind of access. Zenny does. That's empowerment.
And I learned that from you. That's why, and I know you got to go, but that's why I say this really quick. That's why when I would go to the NFL meetings to cover them, I sit in front.
Right.
Because I wanted to make sure the camera captured me in front. And I'll tell you why, Elihu, not so much because of me, but I wanted black kids to see a black man in the media asking the question.
But I also wanted to make sure they knew you represented me.
Yes.
We're not just a black guy with nobody behind him, with no power or influence. So they wouldn't, if they tried to come around you to me, I said, have you talked to Zenny yet?
You did that with Andy Dolich. I told remember that?
Yeah. I said, no, you got to talk to
Zenny. The hard way.
You don't let people disrespect your people.
Yeah.
Because if they disrespect your people, they're disrespecting you.
Right. Right.
That's what empowerment is all about. And we've not listened to Lauren Taylor or anyone else. Get good people who are loyal, who are smart, who are capable, and empower them. Because you can't do it by yourself.
All right, boss.
Zenny,
stick around.
Yeah, we'll be talking, and there's a lot to talk about. There'll be another ballot dump at 5 o'clock. I hope we have a better idea as to who's elected and who's not. And in January, we're going to get on with a brand new day.
That's right. Hey, stick around in the background, Elihu. Everybody will be back. We have Alyssa Victory on at 7 o'clock tonight, 10 o'clock Eastern. That should be an interesting conversation. She ran from here too. All right, boss. Don't do anything. Thanks, Derek Sue, for the question.